The colony of Haven's Reach stood quiet against the red horizon of a distant world. Low buildings of steel and stone lay spread across the valley, surrounded by tall towers that collected sunlight and turned it into energy. It was a small settlement, one of many scattered far from Earth, where people lived simple lives of farming, mining, and raising families under alien skies. Ethan Cole was not a soldier, not an explorer, not even a leader. He was just a maintenance worker. Every day he checked water lines, patched broken panels, and kept the colony's systems running. He was strong in body, but he never thought of himself as brave. To him, courage was for soldiers who guarded the outer walls or pilots who flew through empty space. His life was ordinary, and he was content with that. On this particular morning, he walked through the dusty streets with a small toolkit in hand. Children played near the water fountain in the central square. Their laughter mixed with the hum of machines, a reminder that even on a distant planet, life found a way to feel normal. Ethan paused to watch them. He liked seeing children carefree, running in circles, chasing each other, and pretending to be explorers of their own. It reminded him of Earth, a place he had left long ago. Then the warning siren broke the peace. It was a harsh sound, one no colonist ever wanted to hear. Red lights flashed along the edges of the square. People shouted and began rushing indoors. Doors slammed, shutters closed, and parents grabbed their children. Ethan froze for a moment, his heart pounding. The siren meant only one thing: an approach of raiders. The colony had been attacked before. Pirates, scavengers, and hostile aliens sometimes roamed the outer edges of human space. They came to steal supplies, sometimes to cause harm. Usually, the colony's defense drones were quick enough to drive them away. But drones took time to launch, and sometimes that time was too late. Ethan looked around the square. Most of the children had been carried off by their parents. But 3 young ones, too slow to run, were still at the fountain. A boy had fallen, his leg caught between 2 stones. His sister tried to pull him free while another small child cried helplessly beside them, and then the raiders came. From the sky, a small craft descended, dust swirling beneath its engines. Figures jumped out, tall and lean, armored in rough plates of metal. Their skin glowed faintly blue under the strange atmosphere. They carried blades and stun rods, their eyes sharp and unkind. They moved fast, spreading through the square. Most colonists were already gone, but their attention caught on the children. Ethan's breath caught. He saw where the raiders were looking, and he knew what would happen if no one stood between them and the young ones. His body told him to run like everyone else, but his feet did not move. Instead, he dropped his toolkit and ran toward the fountain. The first raider reached the children just as Ethan stepped in front of them. The alien tilted his head, surprised to see a single man blocking his path. Ethan had no weapon, only his hands. Still, he raised his arms wide, shielding the children behind him. "Leave them alone," he said, his voice shaking but steady. The raider barked a laugh, a harsh sound that echoed across the empty square. He struck Ethan in the chest with the end of his rod. Pain shot through Ethan's ribs and he stumbled back, but he did not fall. He planted his feet again and held his ground. The children whimpered behind him. Ethan glanced back just long enough to whisper, "Stay down. Don't move." Their wide eyes filled with tears, but they obeyed. Another raider joined the first. Together they circled Ethan like hunters testing prey. One swung his blade, grazing Ethan's arm, leaving a shallow cut. The sting burned, but Ethan clenched his jaw. His heart screamed at him to run, yet he stood firm. If he moved aside, even for a moment, the raiders would reach the children. The aliens grew impatient. One jabbed his rod hard into Ethan's side. He gasped, knees buckling, but still he did not fall. He straightened again, his breathing rough, his body aching. His mind repeated only one thought: not the children. Anyone but them. Blow after blow struck him. His face swelled, his back bent, his strength drained. Yet every time he was knocked down, he pushed himself back up. The raiders looked at him with disbelief. Why would a single human, unarmed and weak compared to them, stand again and again? They could not understand it. Minutes felt like hours. Ethan's vision blurred, but through the haze he saw the children still huddled behind him, untouched. That was enough to keep him standing. Finally, the colony's defense drones arrived. Sleek machines swooped into the square, weapons humming with energy. The raiders hissed in anger, realizing they were outnumbered now. With sharp gestures, they retreated, leaping back to their craft. In moments, the ship lifted off, leaving only silence and dust. Ethan collapsed to his knees, his chest heaving. Pain throbbed through his entire body. The children rushed forward, crying, clinging to his arms. He managed a weak smile through swollen lips. "You're safe," he whispered. "That's what matters." Colonists emerged slowly from their shelters. Some hurried to tend to Ethan, lifting him gently, carrying him toward the infirmary. Others comforted the children. Word spread quickly of what he had done, that a maintenance worker with no training and no weapon had stood against raiders to protect the young. As he was laid on a stretcher, Ethan closed his eyes. He did not feel like a hero. He only felt tired, broken, and glad the children were alive. To him, that was enough. But far above the colony, unseen by human eyes, another presence had been watching. A small cloaked scout ship hovered in orbit, its sensors recording every moment. The raiders' attack, Ethan's resistance, his refusal to yield, all of it had been witnessed. Inside the scout ship, alien figures exchanged quiet words. One of them transmitted the recording back to their empress, the queen of the Veyari Empire. The message was short, but it carried weight. "We have found a human who stands without fear. The queen must see him." And so, while Ethan lay unaware in the colony's medical bay, events were already moving far beyond him. His simple act of courage had been noticed by powers greater than he could imagine. His life, once ordinary, was about to change forever. Days passed after the raid on Haven's Reach. The colony repaired its walls, patched its broken systems, and tried to return to normal. People went back to work, children played again in the square, and families spoke with relief that they were still safe. But nothing was truly the same. Everywhere Ethan went, people looked at him differently. Some nodded with respect, others whispered his name as if it carried a new meaning. The children he had shielded followed him with wide, grateful eyes, as if he had become their guardian forever. Ethan did not enjoy the attention. His body still ached from the beating. His ribs were bandaged, his arm wrapped tight, and bruises colored his skin. He did not see himself as a hero, just someone who did what had to be done. In his heart, he believed anyone else would have done the same. Yet far beyond Haven's Reach, his act had carried farther than he could imagine. The Queen's Council on the Veyari homeworld, a place of towering crystal spires and endless blue skies, the royal court gathered. Warriors in silver armor stood like statues, their spears crossed in silent discipline. Advisors in flowing robes lined the hall, their voices low but tense. At the far end, upon a throne of glowing stone, sat Queen Sarathis, ruler of the Veyari Empire. Her eyes, bright and piercing like twin suns, studied the image projected before her. It was the recording sent by the scout ship, a human standing before alien raiders, enduring strike after strike, refusing to step aside from the children behind him. The hall was silent except for the sound of Ethan's ragged breaths on the recording. When the image ended, the silence grew heavier. One of the Queen's generals finally spoke. "A curious display. The human is not a warrior, yet he defied armed raiders. He should have fled. He chose to suffer instead." Another voice rose, sharp and doubtful. "It is foolishness, not bravery. A weak creature throwing away his life. Such behavior has no place in our empire." But the Queen raised her hand and the hall fell silent. Her voice, smooth yet commanding, carried across the chamber. "You mistake weakness for strength. Look again." He stood without weapon, without shield, yet he did not yield. He placed himself between danger and the helpless. "Tell me, which of you would endure such pain for strangers' children?" No one answered. The Queen's gaze swept across them, and many lowered their eyes. She leaned back on her throne, her mind already turning. For the Veyari, honor was everything. Strength was valued, but it was always tied to battle and conquest. Rarely did they see selflessness as strength. Yet here was a human who embodied both courage and compassion in a single act. "This man," the Queen declared, "is of interest. He is not to be ignored." The envoys arrived back on Haven's Reach. Ethan thought the worst was over. He was wrong. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped behind the red hills, a fleet of sleek silver ships appeared in the sky. They moved with grace, not like raiders, but like envoys of something far greater. The colony's defense systems hummed to life, ready to fire. But a message came through before anyone attacked. "By order of Queen Sarathis of the Veyari Empire, we come in peace. We request an audience with a human called Ethan Cole." The colony froze in shock. An alien queen requesting a meeting? With a maintenance worker? No one could make sense of it. The governor of Haven's Reach, an older woman named Marin, hurried to Ethan's quarters. She found him still mending pipes, trying to return to normal work. Her face was pale with disbelief. "Ethan," she said firmly, "you need to come with me. The Vayari demand to see you." Ethan frowned. "Me? Why?" Not just anything," Marin cut in. "Word of what you did has spread farther than we thought. They must have seen it. And if their queen wants you, we can't refuse." Fear stirred in Ethan's chest. He had never left Haven's Reach, never dreamed of standing before rulers of alien empires. Yet if the colony resisted, it could mean danger for everyone. "Fine," he said quietly. "I'll go. But only so they don't harm anyone here." First contact. The next day, the colony square was filled with tension. The Vayari envoy ship landed gracefully, its surface shining like polished crystal. From it stepped tall figures in ceremonial armor, their movements precise and elegant. Their faces were sharp, their skin faintly luminous. They carried no visible weapons, yet their presence alone radiated power. The lead envoy stepped forward, his voice deep and formal. "By decree of Her Majesty Queen Sarathis, we summon Ethan Cole to the Vayari court. His actions have drawn her attention. He must come with us," the colonists murmured nervously. Some looked at Ethan with pity, others with pride. Children clung to their parents, whispering the name of the man who had saved them. Ethan stood quietly, his hands at his sides. He wanted nothing more than to stay in the colony, to return to his simple life. But he also knew the colony could not risk angering the Vayari. He stepped forward. "I'll go," he said. His voice was steady, though his heart beat hard in his chest. "If it keeps the colony safe, I'll go." The envoy bowed his head. "Your courage is noted." The journey, the ship lifted into the sky, carrying Ethan away from everything he knew. He sat by a window, staring down at Haven's Reach as it grew smaller and smaller. His heart ached with uncertainty. Would he ever return? The Vayari ship was unlike anything he had seen. Silent, smooth, filled with soft blue light. The aliens treated him with respect, though their expressions were unreadable. They offered him food, water, and a place to rest. As they traveled through the stars, Ethan could not sleep. His thoughts returned again and again to the children he had protected. That moment had changed his life in ways he had never expected. Arrival at the Vayari world. After days in space, the ship entered orbit around the Vayari homeworld. Ethan pressed his face to the glass, awestruck. The planet glowed like a jewel, vast oceans of silver blue, cities built upon towering spires that rose higher than mountains, bridges of light stretching between them. When the ship descended, he saw creatures and machines moving in harmony, a society both advanced and disciplined. He was led into a grand palace of crystal and stone. The halls were wide and filled with murals of past battles and rulers. Tall warriors lined the path, their eyes fixed forward, their discipline unbroken. Ethan felt small among them, but he walked with his head high. At the end of the hall, upon her glowing throne, sat Queen Sarathis. She was taller than her envoys, her presence overwhelming. Her crown shimmered like stars, her eyes steady and curious. The hall fell silent as Ethan was brought before her. The queen's question, Queen Sarathis leaned forward, studying him. "So," she said, her voice calm yet powerful, "this is the human who endured the beating to protect the young." Ethan swallowed, his throat dry. He bowed awkwardly, unsure of the customs. "I'm no one special, I couldn't let them hurt the children." The queen tilted her head. "Children not your own, strangers, yet you risked your life." "Why?" Ethan hesitated, then spoke simply. "Because they were defenseless, and someone had to stand. If I hadn't, they would have suffered. I couldn't live with that." The hall was silent. The queen's advisors shifted uneasily, whispering among themselves. To them, such an answer was strange. Strength for others' sake, not for personal glory. But the queen's lips curved into a small, thoughtful smile. "Interesting," she said. "A man who stands not for himself but for the weak. Perhaps there is more strength in this human than we believed." Ethan looked up, unsure what fate awaited him. All he knew was that his life, once ordinary, had now stepped onto a path he could never turn back from. Ethan Cole had never seen anything like the Vayari homeworld. The moment he stepped out of the Queen's throne hall, escorted by silent warriors, his eyes could not stop moving. The palace itself stretched high above the clouds, carved from glowing crystal that pulsed softly with energy. Bridges of light connected towers so tall they vanished into the mist. Below, the streets flowed with beings of the Queen's people, moving in perfect order, their armor glinting like stars. To him, everything felt otherworldly, too grand, too powerful. He was just a man from a small colony, someone who fixed broken water pipes and patched roofs. Now he walked among an empire whose strength was beyond his imagination. A world of honor. The Queen had ordered that Ethan be treated as a guest, not a prisoner. He was given a chamber within the palace. It was vast compared to his small quarters back on Haven's Reach. The walls shimmered with faint blue light and the floor was soft beneath his bare feet. A wide window showed the city beyond, spires rising like frozen lightning, ships gliding silently through the air, and creatures soaring on wings of light. Ethan stood at the window for a long time, his reflection faint against the glass. He felt both amazed and small. Why would a queen of such power care about him? Why had she brought him here? He did not have the answer. Every day, attendants brought him food that glowed faintly and tasted strange but rich. They offered him robes of woven silver threads, though he often preferred his old worn clothes. Guards escorted him through parts of the palace, allowing him to see how the Veyari lived. He noticed something about them. Everything was tied to honor. Warriors bowed to one another before training. Advisors spoke with measured words, never interrupting. Even in the streets, strangers moved with respect for one another's space. Order and discipline ruled their lives. Yet as perfect as it looked, Ethan could sense something missing. He rarely saw laughter or kindness between strangers, or the simple warmth of families he knew on Haven's Reach. The Veyari seemed to value strength and pride above all else. Compassion was not a word that fit easily into their world. The Queen's curiosity. One morning he was summoned again before Queen Sarathis. The throne hall was filled with her advisors, warriors, and nobles. Their glowing eyes followed him with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. To them he was fragile, his skin dull compared to their luminous glow, his body small beside their tall frames. The Queen leaned forward. "Ethan Cole," she said, "I have shown your act to my court. Many are divided. Some see courage, others see foolishness. I wish to understand you better." Ethan bowed his head slightly, unsure if that was the right gesture, but hoping it showed respect. "I'll answer as best I can, Your Majesty." The Queen's eyes narrowed, not unkindly, but with deep interest. "Tell me, when you stood before the raiders, you knew you could not win. You knew their strength was greater. Why did you not run?" Ethan hesitated. All eyes were on him. He felt the weight of their stares, as if every word would be judged like a blade on a scale. "I didn't think about winning," he said simply. "I only thought about the children. They couldn't protect themselves. If I ran, they would suffer. I couldn't let that happen. Even if I fell, at least I'd have tried to give them a chance." The hall was silent. Murmurs spread among the nobles. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others frowned as if confused. One advisor, tall and stern, stepped forward. "Such thinking is dangerous. Sacrifice without gain is wasteful. How can weakness be called strength?" Ethan turned to him, his voice steady though his heart raced. "Strength isn't only about fighting. Sometimes it's about standing when no one else will. Sometimes it's about taking pain so others don't have to. That may look weak to you, but to me that's the strongest thing a person can do." The hall fell into deeper silence. For a moment no one spoke. Then the Queen raised her hand, silencing further whispers. Her eyes held a glimmer of something rare, approval. "Perhaps," she said softly, "there is truth in his words." A different kind of strength. In the days that followed, Ethan was allowed to move more freely within the palace. Warriors trained in great halls, clashing with staffs that sparked with energy. Their movements were sharp, precise, and brutal. Ethan watched, impressed by their skill but aware he could never match it. One warrior noticed him watching and sneered. "Is this the human our queen favors? Look how frail he is. He could not last a single round." Ethan did not respond with anger. Instead, he smiled faintly. "You're right. I'm not built for fighting like you, but strength comes in many forms." The warrior laughed and returned to training. Ethan walked away, but the words lingered. He knew the Veyari judged him by what they saw: muscles, height, endurance. To them, he was nothing. Yet he hoped in time they might see beyond that. Quiet connections. Not everyone in the palace looked at Ethan with disdain. Some were curious. One attendant, a young Veyari named Kalen, often brought him food and water. Unlike others, Kalen asked questions. "Is it true," Kalen asked one evening, "that humans live in families where parents care for children until they are grown?" "Yes," Ethan replied. "Parents work, struggle, and sometimes sacrifice everything just to see their children safe and happy." Kalen's glowing eyes widened. "Here young are raised by the state, trained from the beginning to serve the empire. Parents do not stay with them."
"To hear that you would risk your life for children not your own."
"It is strange, but admirable." Ethan smiled softly. "Maybe that's the difference. To us, every child matters. Even if they aren't ours, they're still worth protecting." Kalen bowed his head thoughtfully, as if Ethan's words planted seeds in his mind. Doubts and threats, not all, were pleased with Ethan's presence. In hidden corners of the palace, some nobles muttered that the queen gave too much attention to a mere human. To them, it was an insult that one so weak could stand in the great hall and speak of strength. Whispers grew louder, that the queen was making a mistake, that this human should be tested, perhaps even removed. Their pride was wounded, and pride was a dangerous thing among the Veyari. Ethan felt the tension. He noticed the sharp stares, the quiet words that stopped when he entered a room. He understood he was walking on dangerous ground, yet he refused to change who he was. The queen's reflection. Late one night, Queen Sarathis stood alone in her private chamber, looking out across her city. The lights of the spires glowed softly, reflecting in her eyes. She thought about the human who now stayed within her palace. He was fragile compared to her people, yet he carried a fire they rarely showed. Compassion was not a strength her empire valued, but perhaps it should be. For too long, the Veyari had built their empire on conquest and discipline. But what if there was another way? She whispered to herself, almost unheard, "Perhaps this human is a lesson to us all." The calm. Before the trial, Ethan did not know what the future held. Each day he learned more of the Veyari, their customs, their pride, their endless pursuit of strength. Yet he remained true to himself. He spoke simply, lived simply, and treated those around him with respect. And slowly, in small ways, his presence began to stir change. Some attendants listened to his words. Some warriors, though they still mocked him, looked at him with a flicker of doubt in their eyes. Even Kalen, once uncertain, now defended him quietly among others. But beneath the surface, opposition brewed. The nobles whispered louder, demanding proof that the human was more than weak words. Their pressure grew stronger until finally, they brought their demands before the queen herself. "If he is truly strong," they said, "let him face the trial of worth." The queen listened in silence, her gaze deep and thoughtful. She knew what the trial meant. It was no small test. It was dangerous, challenging, and designed to break even seasoned warriors. Yet she also knew the human spirit. And a thought stirred within her. Perhaps this was the moment to show her people a different kind of strength. So she gave her answer. "Very well. He shall face the trial." And thus Ethan's path, once that of a simple maintenance worker, now led him toward a challenge that could decide not only his fate, but the way an entire empire viewed strength itself. Ethan stood at the edge of the arena, his eyes scanning the enormous circular chamber before him. The trial of worth was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was not simply a test of strength. It was a gauntlet of challenges designed to measure endurance, courage, intelligence, and strategy. Every surface was polished stone, every obstacle sharp and precise. High walls surrounded the arena, and thousands of Veyari looked down from balconies, their glowing eyes focused on the human who dared face their tradition. The queen's voice echoed through the chamber. "Ethan Cole," she said, her tone calm but commanding, "you will undergo the trial of worth. This trial is not meant to humiliate, but to measure your spirit. Show us your strength, and you may earn the respect of our people." Ethan swallowed. His heart pounded, but he drew a deep breath. He remembered the children back home. He remembered standing against raiders with no weapon but his will. "I can do this," he thought. "I will do this not to prove myself, but because I must." The first challenge, and endurance. The first stage was endurance. Ethan had to climb a towering wall of smooth crystal. There were no holds, no visible footholds. He could barely grip the surface, and his arms ached after the first few meters. Around him, Veyari warriors leaped with ease, their claws and strength allowing them to scale the wall effortlessly. Ethan struggled. He slipped several times, scraping his palms and knees. Pain shot through him, but he gritted his teeth and pressed onward. He imagined the children from Haven's Reach, the lives he had once saved. If I stop now, who will stop them? That thought carried him up the wall, one slow step at a time. Finally, he reached the top. He was battered and exhausted, but he had finished. The crowd whispered. The Veyari had never seen a human endure like this. They expected him to fail, and yet he had succeeded through sheer will. The second challenge. Courage. The next challenge was courage. Ethan had to cross a bridge suspended high above the arena floor. The bridge was narrow and swayed with the wind. Below, a simulated chasm extended infinitely, glowing with light that made it seem even more terrifying. He took a step onto the bridge. His legs shook, his stomach churned, but he did not turn back. Halfway across, the bridge tilted, testing his balance. He stumbled but caught himself. Every muscle burned, but he remembered the Queen's words. Show us your spirit. Step by step, he crossed the bridge. When he reached the other side, he was not just relieved, he was proud. The Veyari murmured again. Courage, they realized, was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. The third challenge, intelligence. The third test required intelligence. A maze of shifting walls and traps opened before him. Ethan had to navigate through it to retrieve a glowing crystal at the center. The walls moved constantly and traps clicked and hummed with deadly precision. Ethan observed quietly. He noticed patterns in the movement of the walls and timing of the traps. He did not rush. Instead, he waited, watched, and then moved when the path was safe. Using his wits rather than force, he made his way to the crystal and returned it to the entrance. Again, whispers spread through the crowd. Humans, they realized, were clever. Not strong in the same way as the Veyari, but capable of thinking differently. A new kind of respect began to form. The final challenge, strategy. The final stage was strategy. Ethan was placed in a simulation of a battlefield. Holographic enemies moved toward him, each one faster and stronger than any human he had ever seen. He had no weapon. He had no allies. Yet he was expected to succeed. He watched the patterns of the enemies. Some were aggressive, some cautious. He found weaknesses in their movements and used the environment to his advantage. He led them into traps using falling stones, narrow corridors, and sharp angles. Step by step, he outmaneuvered them all, until the last holographic enemy fell. The crowd erupted into murmurs of astonishment. Ethan had done the impossible, not through raw power, but through persistence, courage, intelligence, and strategy. Recognition, Queen Sarathis rose from her throne, her gaze upon Ethan calm but proud. You have completed the trial of worth, she said. Not as a warrior, but as one who embodies true strength of spirit. You have taught us that courage, intelligence, and selflessness are as powerful as muscle or weapon. The human spirit is indeed remarkable. Ethan bowed, exhausted but relieved. He did not feel like a hero, yet he knew he had passed not for glory, but because he refused to give up, even when the odds were impossible. Even some of the nobles who had doubted him now nodded in respect. The whisper of admiration spread throughout the hall. The Veyari were beginning to understand that strength was not only physical, it was moral and mental as well. Ethan left the arena that day knowing something had changed, not just in him, but in an entire empire. Ethan awoke the next morning to the soft glow of Veyari sunlight. His body ached from the trial of worth, but his mind was alive with new thoughts. For the first time, he realized that his small acts of courage on Haven's Reach had led him to something far larger than himself. He was summoned once again to the throne hall. The nobles and advisors gathered, all eyes on him. Queen Sarathis sat calmly on her throne, her expression unreadable. Ethan Cole, she said, you have completed the trial of worth. You have proven that humans possess a unique form of strength, one that combines courage, compassion, and intelligence. This is rare, even among my own people. Ethan bowed, unsure what to say. His mind was still filled with images of the trials, of the children he had protected, and of the people who now looked at him differently. The Queen's offer. Queen Sarathis continued. Your actions have impressed me. I offer you a choice. You may return to your colony, living your life as you once did, or you may remain here at my side as a representative of your people and a bridge between our worlds. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. To remain would mean leaving everything he knew. To return would mean safety, comfort, and a chance to continue a simple life. But staying offered a chance to shape an entire empire's understanding of humans. He thought of Haven's Reach, of the children, and of all the people who might benefit from a connection with the Veyari. He realized that courage was not just about defending one moment, it was about acting for a greater purpose. "I will stay," he said finally. "If I can help protect both humans and your people, then I will." The Queen's eyes softened and she nodded. "Then so it shall be. You will be honored as the protector of the innocent. Your presence will remind us that strength comes not only from power, but from the courage to act for the weak." Acceptance and respect in the days that followed, Ethan adjusted to life in the Veyari court. He trained, not with weapons, but with strategy and diplomacy. He met leaders of various worlds, advising them on the value of courage, compassion, and moral strength. Even the nobles who had once doubted him began to respect him. They saw the truth in the Queen's words. A person's worth is measured not only by physical might, but by character. Ethan never forgot Haven's Reach. He sent messages and supplies to his colony, ensuring that the children were safe and that the settlement prospered. Though far from home, he carried it in his heart. A new path months passed. The human who had once endured a beating to protect children now stood as a symbol of hope and unity. Queen Cerathis and Ethan often walked together in the palace gardens, discussing strategy, justice, and the future of the empire. He learned their language and customs, but he never lost his human perspective. His courage, his willingness to sacrifice, and his understanding of compassion continued to shape those around him. The Veyari, who once measured worth only by strength, began to see that there were other ways to be powerful. And Ethan, the ordinary man from a small colony, had shown them that humans were capable of greatness beyond measure. Closing Ethan's story was told across the Veyari Empire, the human who endured, who did not yield, and who stood for the weak. Children on distant worlds learned of him, and adults came to respect his courage. His life, once ordinary, had become extraordinary. He had not sought glory. He had not sought power. He had only chosen to protect those who could not protect themselves. And in doing so, he became a bridge between worlds, a reminder that the strongest force in the universe is the human spirit. As Queen Cerathis looked down from her throne one evening, she saw Ethan standing among her people, not as a servant, not as a soldier, but as a true protector. And she knew the choice to honor him was the right one. Ethan smiled quietly. His journey was far from over, but he had proven one undeniable truth. Courage, selflessness, and heart could change even the greatest of empires, and so, the human who had endured the beating to protect the young had found his place among the stars.